Fasten your seatbelts. I'm taking you for the ride of your life. I'm going to show you what this costume is.
All right, you primitive screwheads, listen up.
I am the monster that breathing men would kill.
It might be a tumor.
It's not a tumor.
I go out of my way for you. I do everything to try and make you happy. I feed you, I clean you, I dress you, and what thanks do I get?
I am so sorry.
Oh, you're fucked.
I am the writing on the wall, the whisper in the classroom. Without these things, I am nothing. So now I must shed innocent blood.
Dinner is served.
Save yourself from hell.
You're listening to the 30-something movie podcast. One movie each week. 30 years in the making.
It is the 30-something movie podcast. It is Halloween Day. This episode is coming out on actual Halloween Day. It's not our typical Wednesday, but for a very special movie, it needed to be out on a very special day. So this one is coming up on Halloween Day. This is Alien³ I have been looking forward to talking about this one for quite a while now, and have been, over the course of the years, I think there's been a little bit of a debate between us and some of our fellow hosts. We used to have, one of our co-hosts was Jason. I remember Jason Ko, who used to work with us at the school. He and I got into a little debate one time about Alien³ and I think he used to refer to me as his one friend that likes Alien³. And so we would talk about that from time to time. And then here and there, we've had a few other folks. I know that Jason and Dee from the Surely You Can't Be Serious podcast have talked about, Jason in particular has talked about how angry this movie makes him. So I don't know if we're going to have, I don't know if this is what do I want to refer to this as? Is this going to be kind of like our Last Jedi Rise of Skywalker kind of moment with Alien³ or I don't know. I'm going to spoil it right now, and if you've been listening to the show at all in the last few years, you'll know it's not really a spoiler. I love this movie. So that's my take on this, and I have got, for all the different times that I've had people give me grief about enjoying this movie, I have all my reasons why, and they are completely solid reasons, which I am going to share on this particular episode. But I did feel like, because I have heard a little bit of criticism here and there over the years of this one, I did feel like I needed to collect the dream team to discuss this one and at least have one person on my side. So we put out the call, we sent out the distress signal, and Rob Perry came back, one of our Patreon co-executive producers. Rob Perry came back for this episode to help me, to be my tag team partner on this episode for Alien³. So Rob, good to see you again.
Glad to be here, John. Gloves are off.
Yes. And Dennis is here as well. Dennis.
Hey everybody. How you doing?
You doing? And Patrick. Patrick, how are you?
Hey everybody. How are we doing?
So like I said, we have got the dream team here to discuss Alien³. Right off the bat, really quickly, I think that some of us have seen multiple versions of this. Dennis, I think you said that you had watched the theatrical version of this one, and Pat, you had seen what is referred to as the assembly cut of this one.
Yes.
So we're gonna have the breadth of knowledge and viewing experience for this one. But I was telling Dennis before we started recording, if you get a chance to, do definitely go see the one that's referred to as the assembly cut, because that is, for as much as I still like the theatrical one, it is a superior movie to see the assembly cut. It's just, there's more character development, there's more dialogue, there's just some scenes are cut a little bit differently, and it's as close, I think, as you can get to maybe the original vision that David Fincher would have had for this movie. So
and why is it called the assembly cut, not the director's cut?
Well, because David Fincher has refused to talk politely about his experience making the movie. And a couple of times the 20th Century Fox has asked him to come back and do his director's cut. He said, no, thank you. Huh. So this is actually taken from work prints And the producers who were involved in the creation of the film took the footage and have not only done the assembly cut, as it was called in 2003, they have gone back and fixed and found more footage and added back into it. It's still called the 2003 special edition or producers or assembly cut, but the version that is out there right now as of 2010 is better called the producer's cut, because the producers have gone back in and put in even more scenes, alternate takes of scenes, and continue to improve the movie. The only thing that they haven't done, they didn't Lucas it and go back and fix some of the special effects. So it still feels like it still feels and looks like it did in the 1993 theatrical version.
So we don't have Xenomorph Mibuki. Ha ha ha. We don't have any of that kind of stuff. No. Okay. Gotcha.
No, we don't have like an awkward stepping on the tail of the xenomorph kind of a scene, and it is not quite edited just right. And yeah.
Hashtag Vasquez shot first.
Correct.
Okay. Got it.
You said alien. They thought you meant illegal alien, and she signed up. That's not this movie, though. That was the last movie. But we will, I'm sure we'll be talking about all of the Alien movies, but this one specifically, Alien 3. So very quickly, spoiler alert. We spoil. As we talk about movies, we may mention a movie you've never seen before. We just kind of talk freely here. We don't do any other spoiler alerts other than this. So just kind of be warned, if we start to talk about a movie you don't want to know about, maybe just skip ahead a few seconds and continue on. Make sure you visit our website, 30podcast.com, where you can leave a rating for us, leave a voicemail that we can play on the air and respond to. Become one of our co-executive producers via Patreon, just like Rob. You get access to bonus episodes there, so there's a lot of great bonus stuff there. You're getting 3 bonus episodes a month, 1 full length and 2 little short, kind of 15-minute episodes there. So head on over there. There's all kinds of other tiers where you can get in the show, join us on the show, as Rob has and as a few of the other co-executive producers have in the past. So go check it out over there. You can get there from 30podcast.com. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. If there's anything else before we just go ahead and jump on into the trivia section of this. I don't think so. As I said at the end of our last episode, my soul is prepared, so I'm ready to go. So
San Dimas High School football rules.
Yeah, it does. All right. This one is Alien³, and it came out on the 22nd of May, 1992, rated R. This one, the assembly cut, is a runtime of 2 hours and 24 minutes, directed by David Fincher, although he doesn't want to tell you that. He also directed Seven and Zodiac. He really and truly has said, I don't want to have anything to do with this. I don't want to talk about this movie. I don't want to see this movie. One of the reasons why, it was called the producer's cut or the assembly cut. I think he made a deal, like he gave his blessing to the producers to rework this, but he said, you have my blessing to do this, just don't ever call it a director's cut. He's like, I really don't want to have anything to do with this movie. I hated the experience. I have nothing nice to say about it. Keep me uninvolved. So while David Fincher was the director of this movie, he'd probably rather pull an Alan Smithy. Like, wasn't that the name? Alan Smithy was the name of when directors didn't want their name attached to a movie.
Yes,
yeah,
that is it, Alan.
Yeah,
I could understand that from a workplace perspective.
Yeah, I was going to jump in here and just ask a question then. So is the reason he wants himself distance is because it was because of the experience with the studio, correct? Not with
the experience with the studio.
Movie. He's not embarrassed of the movie, or
he has called it. In fact, there's a quote I have right here that says, "There's no one problem with the 65 million effed up first time filmmaker. Look, I made a crucial error. I listened to people who were paying for the movie, and they said the way to go about this is to not work with your friends. The way to go about this is to work with people who have done this time and time and time again. And basically that translates into meet a lot of people who are going to resent you and your age and are not going to want to take instructions for you and allow them to tell you what you can and cannot do." And that's a direct quote from him from a 2009 interview. So the experience of making the movie itself was what was so painful. And he feels that it was a flawed film by the time it got on the screens.
Yeah.
And I think in another interview at some point, he also said that he almost decided not to move forward with continuing in the film industry because of this movie. Like, it was such a traumatic experience for him that he almost just decided to step away and not direct anything else, which definitely would have been a shame.
Okay. All right. Okay.
Writers for this one were Vincent Ward, who did the story. David Giler did the screenplay. He died in 2020. Walter Hill did the screenplay, and Larry Ferguson also did screenplay. Ward wrote Vigil and River Queen. Giler wrote The Money Pit and Beverly Hills Cop 2. Hill wrote 48 Hours and Streets of Fire. Ferguson wrote Hunt for Red October and Highlander. Producers on this one are Gordon Carroll, who died in 2005, David Giler, and Walter Hill. Carroll did the Alien movies and Red Heat, and Hill did Tales from the Crypt. Giler also did the other Alien movies, and Hill also did Last Man Standing. Music for this one done by Elliot Goldenthal, who did Demolition Man and Frida. Cinematography by Alex Thompson, who died in 2007, who did Legend and Excalibur. Editor was David Crowther and Terry Rawlings. Rawlings died in 2019. Crowther did The Abyss and Arlington Road. Rawlings did Blade Runner and The Saint. Budget was $60 million. Box office was $159.8 million. Flickmetrics gives it a 59%, and CinemaScore gives it a C. So very, very clearly, most times those cinema scores are at least in the AB range. So clearly, people that went to the theater, it was not the Alien movie they were looking for. When they came out of that theater, they were clearly not necessarily happy with it, because typically those scores are a bit higher. Starring Sigourney Weaver as Ellen Ripley. She was in Avatar and Gorillas in the Mist. Charles S. Dutton played Dylan. He was in Rudy and A Time to Kill. Charles Dance played Dr. Clemens. He was in Game of Thrones and Last Action Hero. Paul McGann played Gallic. He was in The Three Musketeers and Queen of the Damned. Brian Glover, who died in 1997, played Andrews. He was in American Werewolf in London and Snow White, A Tale of Terror. Ralph Brown played Aaron. He was in Star Wars The Phantom Menace and Wayne's World 2. Danny Webb played Morse. He was in Robin Hood and Valkyrie. Christopher John Fields played Rains. He was in Fight Club and Stargate. Holt McCallany played Junior. He was in Fight Club and Mindhunter. And Lance Henriksen was Bishop 2, or they call him Bishop 2 in the credits. And he was in Hard Target and The Quick and the Dead. All right. So a couple of this will kind of get into some of the David Fincher stuff as well. A couple of the different trivia pieces here. At one point, David Fincher was denied permission by the film's producers to shoot a crucial scene in the infirmary between Ripley and the alien. Against orders, Fincher grabbed Sigourney Weaver, a camera, and they shot the scene anyway. This is the iconic scene of Ripley up against the wall with the alien coming right up next to her face. So originally he was told, nope, you're not shooting that scene. And he just decided, oh, yeah, I am. Just grabbed everything he needed and went and did it. And this is like one of the things as I'm starting to argue for why I think this is a really good Alien movie, and I think it deserves its spot in the pantheon of the Alien movies, is even if you haven't seen Alien 3, that scene. Like, even if you've only seen Alien or Aliens, that scene of the alien coming right up to Ripley's face. You know, bald Ripley with the alien coming right up to her face and sticking his little second mouth out and all that. You know that scene, whether it's from a animated GIF that you used when you responded to one of your friend's text messages or whatever, but you know that scene. So it's one of the most iconic scenes from any of the Alien movies.
And can you clarify what's the reason they did? Why couldn't he film it? Why didn't they want?
I don't think it didn't even say here why. It was one of the shots he wanted to do, and the producers said no.
I could almost guarantee it was because it would have given away further plot points in the movie almost right away. Well,
okay.
I can argue they give away what's going on in the movie in the very first scene. So
right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, so let's see a couple of the others here. Oh, one of the things I kind of enjoyed reading this one, when David Fincher was pretty down and out on this one and just, you know, not interested in necessarily even staying in the movie business, there were a couple of things that ended up kind of helping him out. It says here, the first thing was that Sigourney Weaver publicly and often angrily sided with Fincher against 20th Century Fox, telling journalists that the studio had made decisions that resulted in an impossible situation for the young director and that he would have an excellent career if given further chances. The other thing was that producer Arnold Coppelson knew and didn't respect the management at Fox, and that was part of the process where he ultimately offered Fincher a new project a few years later, and that project was the movie Seven. And that is David Fincher pretty much was catapulted into the rest of his career after that point. So, yeah, and it's this other quote. I knew you had a direct quote from him. There was this other quote that I had, and I remember this kind of summed it all up too. David Fincher said, "I had to work on it for 2 years, got fired off it 3 times, and I had to fight for every single thing. No one hated it more than me. To this day, no one hates it more than me." So, no love lost from David Fincher in the making of this movie.
So I'm just going to helicopter in. It's like you hire a guy to do a job. Let the guy do the job. You know what I'm saying? You know what I'm saying? I mean, it's like, why I get the higher ups wanting to come in for whatever reason and all that, but my gosh, you hired the guy to do the job. Let the guy to do the job. That's just my take. But I don't know. I don't know all the ins and outs.
Are you saying nobody's asking you to make movies?
No one's asking me to make movies. But you asked David Fincher to make the movie. Why not just let the guy make the movie as opposed to just putting roadblocks up all over the place?
Mm-hmm.
But.
Mm-hmm. So interestingly, William Gibson wrote a kind of an early treatment for the film based on some of the ideas from the producers, David Giler, Walter Hill. And this is actually, I think I might have purchased this when I had some credits from audible.com. They just brought this out as I think they did a graphic novel version of it too. Is that right? Yeah.
Yes, they did.
Okay. They did it as an audiobook and they did it as a graphic novel. I don't think I've read the graphic novel yet, but I did pick up the audiobook and listen to it. Basically, it's, I don't know if they call it the original screenplay of Alien 3, and it's supposedly the original story for this, in which it's almost broken up into kind of a two-parter, in which the first part, Ripley is in a coma, and Newt and Hicks are the kind of the main characters of this. And then at some point, some disaster occurs, and Ripley is then shot off into space in some kind of an escape pod, and then that's where it kind of picks up in the second half of the story, or the second movie, if they were going to make this into kind of a 2-part movie kind of a deal. It does incorporate some of the pieces of like a little bit of like the religious part that kind of plays into this movie a lot. There's some other things, I want to say, in like the original script, it was supposed to be like this giant floating wooden spaceship that all this stuff was taking place in, and so they ended up and there's like some of it kind of gets repeated or gets used in Alien Resurrection, because there's like an alien human hybrid that shows up in part of it. It's like almost like a mix between alien and human. So there was a lot of stuff that I think ended up getting reused in later movies, but that one obviously ended up getting scrapped. And I know we'll get into the opinion piece here in just a little bit, because I want to kind of walk through a little bit of the plot first. But yeah, I'm kind of glad that they did. Like, I listened to the audiobook. It was an interesting story, but I really prefer the Alien 3 that, with the assembly cut, I prefer the Alien 3 that we got, as opposed to this quote unquote original screenplay that they had.
All right, quick question for you. I mean, you've already kind of alluded to the fact that I think you really like this movie. My question for you is, if you went by the theatrical release, did you feel the same way, or is it the assembly that makes the difference for you?
I'll go into this in a little bit more detail a little bit later, but yeah. I have always enjoyed this movie. So whether it was the theatrical cut, this actually was, other than, because I watched the first Alien with my dad when I was probably too young to watch it, and I kind of watched these out of order. I watched the first Alien with my dad, and then I ended up watching this one with some friends when I lived in England, and then it wasn't until maybe like a couple years later that I finally saw Aliens. So
wow.
It probably was not until like later in middle school that I saw Aliens. So I saw them out of order. I saw 1, 3, and then 2.
Were you on vacation for a while, or what was going on?
I don't know why I didn't end up seeing Aliens.
I'm saying, like, that would be like Star Wars coming out, and then you going to Return of the Jedi, and then where were you when Empire Strikes Back came in? Because I remember the big release for Aliens being huge, and there was, I mean,
well, yeah, but you got to remember,
I'm sure, and just like a big deal with that one coming out. So
yeah, but you got to remember, I'm the baby here. I was in kindergarten when Aliens came out.
Oh, there you go. I just settled it.
Yeah.
So they decided. Was it your uncle that used to show you all the movies?
Oh yeah, the one that showed me.
He was on vacation during this time, then. Right?
The one that showed me Porky's when I was 3. Yeah, that uncle. The uncle we don't talk to anymore. Yeah.
I also agree with John that I saw this in the theater twice, and I still enjoy the theatrical cut. And I'm sure John will also allude to, there are things in the theatrical cut that I like, but there are things in the assembly cut that I like even more.
Yeah. Well, and I think I also had the benefit at the time this came out. I was living in England, and there's just something about England seems to love the Alien movies. Like it was always a big deal over there. They had, and I love that I got a chance to go through this, and I think I've talked about this before, maybe when we did our Aliens episode several years ago. They had a kind of this interactive event that was called Alien War. And it was kind of like this. It was almost like a guided tour. Like you went in with a bunch of other people and you were being taken on a guided tour. These people dressed as colonial Marines were kind of walking you through this research facility. And like you walk past these containers that have face huggers in them and alien eggs and all kinds of other stuff. And they're researching it. And then as you're walking down the corridor, all of a sudden like alarms start going off and the Marines start yelling at each other and the lights go out. And so basically it's kind of like a haunted house. Like if you go to a haunted house now, it's kind of like a haunted house if the haunted house was alien themed, and there's a whole part where you get into, and it's not a real elevator, but they shake it a little bit while you're inside. So it kind of feels a little bit like it's an elevator. You get into this elevator, and then when the door opens, somebody in a very realistic looking alien costume reaches through and grabs the Marine by the face and pulls him through the door, and people are screaming. And I went through that when I was probably 11 or 12 years old and thought it was the greatest thing I had ever done up to that point in my little life. So I don't know. I think part of living in England in particular and knowing that British people seem to love the Alien movies. Like it seemed like there was so much stuff there. There was alien stuff everywhere. Like I remember going to the toy stores or the model shops, and they had models of the dog alien, and they had models of the ships and the prison and all kinds of stuff. So I don't know. There was just something about that time and that place that maybe they had a lot of alien comics too. Like I'd go to the bookstore and there were a lot of alien comics. So that kind of got me hooked on all the alien stuff, but it happened to be around the time that this had come out. So I think that's why I had already seen, like I said, Alien, the first one with my dad a couple years before that. And I think it was like the perfect time as this was coming out, and I was just the right age, and my friends loved the Alien movies, and so we were all talking about it and all that. So I think that's why I got hooked on it, and that's why I ended up seeing some of these out of order too. I knew about aliens, like I knew a general idea of the story, and I knew about the Alien Queen because I think there had been like some models at the local model store that we had of like a 1/16th scale Alien Queen or something. So I knew about it. I just hadn't seen the movie up until maybe a little bit later in middle school. All right, let's see. All right, I think that's probably it for trivia. Anybody else have any other trivia stuff you wanted to share, or otherwise I'm going to go on into we'll get the trailer going and then we'll get into our major moments. All right. In a world where Lieutenant Ellen Ripley has everything... Wait a minute. I'm going to do this in a little bit more of a fun way. We'll do the other Don LaFontaine. In a world where Lieutenant Ellen Ripley has had everything ripped away from her, she'll have to contend with backwater prison planet populated by thieves, murderers, and rapists. Oh, and a xenomorph. It's not completely clear which threat will try to kill her first.
Was there an alien on board?
Yes.
There's definitely something in here with us.
We have no weapons of any kind.
Let's start.
It's here!
sometimes we talk about the trailer music and whether that fits with kind of the vibe of the movie, and it still fits just fine. You know, the very kind of chanty music there, and it just fits so well with the kind of the religious theme of the movie and the religious order that we've got that relates to this prison planet. And yeah, so that trailer still works pretty well for me. At least it wasn't like some rock poppy music that they decided to put in the background of Ripley and the other guys running away from this alien. All right. Do you concur, Pat?
Yes.
Okay. I know.
Yes.
I know. Oftentimes you like to comment on the trailer music. So.
Oh, you know, only when it's kind of like that's an interesting choice, or changes the nature of the movie. But no, everything you said I think was right on. It matched tonally. It matched with what was going on.
Yeah. All right, so major moments, and I'm kind of thinking with this one, I've listed out kind of 10 major moments here. I'm kind of thinking with this one, as we go through, we can just kind of talk about, typically we'll separate out the major moments from our deep thoughts, but I kind of feel like that's going to kind of go along with the discussion of these major moments here. So feel free to, as we're talking about the different scenes in the movie, I'll kind of walk us through the plot. Feel free to throw anything in about opinions on certain scenes, the way something was filmed, the way, an actor in a particular scene, stuff like that. So I think we'll blend it together a little bit more tonight than we normally do. So our first major moment is what I'm calling the fire in cryogenic chamber, where we get the kind of the summing up of everything you need to know from the last movie. If you were here last time, you know that they're in their cryogenic chambers. As we finished off Aliens, they escaped from the alien queen. If you hung around long enough and listened to the very end of the credits in Aliens, you did hear the hatching of the alien eggs, or whatever that sound effect is that they kind of showed, or that you could hear at the very end of that. Of course, once I was told that the first time I watched Aliens, like I'm sitting there with the TV like cranked up all the way to, I don't know what the top volume was. I was like, can you really hear something hatching? And then, of course, if you have it turned up like all the way, you can kind of hear this little kind of noise at the end of the credits in Aliens. So
turn it up to 11.
I turned it up very much to 11, and probably made my parents not so happy when I forgot to turn it down after I pulled the VHS out and went back to normal TV, and it was just blasting. But yeah, so we get all caught up here. We know that there is an accident aboard the Sulaco, and Ripley and Newt and Hicks and what's left of Bishop. I mean, he's not half the man he used to be, but whatever's left of him, they get shot out into this EEV evacuation vehicle, this escape pod. And I mean, like you said, Rob, we pretty much know what's going on in the first 2 minutes of the movie, because you see the face hugger kind of crawling, you see the spilt acid blood, you pretty much get a good sense of, yeah, here's what's happening.
And here it's this that I think has enraged everybody who is a fan of the previous movie, and why people don't give this movie a shot is because you immediately know Hicks and Newt probably did not survive. And not to fast forward too much ahead, but you see the crash, and almost immediately when the evacuation starts happening, you realize that Hicks and Newt probably didn't make it. And I think that's why from the get-go, people were like, nope, I'm out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I'd agree.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
I'd agree with that. No, I'd say I agree with that. And I really liked Aliens a whole lot. And that, Rob, yeah, you summed it up exactly. Like it was almost like the same feeling as in Transformers, the movie, when suddenly all your toys became extinct in like the first combat sequence of the movie. And it was like, those are all my guys. That's kind of how I felt with this. It was like, these were you know what I'm saying? These are the guys I was cheering for. And really, they're just going to go out like that.
Feel a little bit like, I think I was comparing this to and I think this is maybe, I don't know. I don't know back then what I was thinking when I saw it, because later on, I think we'll talk about previous conversations we had about this, because I hadn't seen this in a long, long time since that. I've only seen it once before this. But yeah, I was kind of like after watching Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back started with all of a sudden, I don't know, Han Solo and Chewbacca got in an accident on the way back and died, and they weren't in it. And they're just like, oh, they're not in there. You were already invested in these characters, and you basically struggled for them and they survived this previous encounter, only to start within the first opening credits, basically, they're not there. And it just feels like, they just got written out of that movie. So it probably felt like a slap in the face back then to people that we cared about them before, and that's the death you're going to give them. It's just a simple, like, oh, they died in the crash and they're not even in the movie? Really? So I think that could be a problem. And it probably, I would guess back then I probably did have an issue with that.
I'm just going to say, too, from a non-horror perspective guy, and please feel free to point me out where I'm wrong, but like, okay, so there was an alien on the ship, the Sulaco, and it crawled through and did the facehugger thing and all that. Well, I guess that's the theme, is that's why we can keep making aliens movies. And that's the thing, is it's insidious. Like, you never know what's getting infected and how it's going and all this. But I almost kind of would have been like, okay, so the alien gets them. Like, they didn't like sweep the ship. They didn't scan the ship. They didn't check the ship to make sure before they all went to sleep the alien was there. And so I get that that's part of it, that like, okay, well, that's the suspense. But then from a non-horror perspective, like, I'm like, well, that's not suspenseful to me. If the alien always finds a way, if it's always going to get you, then there's no suspense, because you don't have a chance, because the alien's going to always get you. So that's kind of, and again, I mean, it's just, that was kind of my initial reaction in this opening scene, was like, well, you took out the characters that I was invested in, and well, that's not very inventive. It's just, okay, well, the alien found a way. I would have liked a little bit more, or a more nuanced way that the alien was able to dupe them.
Well, see, it's not so much the alien. It's pretty much explained later on that the company, Weyland-Yutani, knew the entire way that the eggs were on board. So if you go back to the previous movie, I guarantee that at some point Burke probably figured out a way to get those eggs onto the ship. Because they had all that stuff in the lab, and there was some way he was going to get those experiments. If the Queen herself did not drop a few kids off on the ship when she infiltrated. That's my fanboy trying to protect how that happened.
Right, that the headcanon, and I do remember that, because that's when the interview with Bishop, right, or what's left of him, the half Bob Bishop, that was what he said, is it was on there, and okay.
I've been staying quiet for just a moment, because I have all the thoughts locked and loaded here and ready to go, but I'm gonna dole these out. As Billy Joel once said in his Live at Long Island concert, I'm gonna space this out for maximum effect. So I'm gonna dole out some of my little thoughts here from time to time. However, I'm gonna push back a little bit on the alien always finds a way. One of the reasons why I think, and I'll pepper other evidence for this throughout the rest of this episode, one of the reasons why I think this is actually a really good alien movie is because I think, and maybe even more so than the other alien movies, I think this movie really, really understands the themes and kind of the heart of the Alien franchise. Like, I think this movie gets it the most. Like, all of the claustrophobia, the nihilism, like that's the biggest part to me. Like, I think the Alien movies are all about the nihilism. I don't think it's the alien that always finds a way. I think the universe finds a way, because I think one of the messages of the Alien movies is that the universe doesn't want you alive. Is that you are going to, I'm going to pull my English teacher hat on right now, and I'm going to pull a quote from Thomas Hobbes, which worst of all, continual fear, danger of violent death, and the life of man, solitary, poor, nasty, brutish, and short. And I think that sums up how you are supposed to feel about the universe and life in the Alien movies. Is the universe does not want you to live. The universe is out to get you. The universe is out to pretty much annihilate all life. And the universe, in some way, has created this perfect killing organism in order to ensure that life does not go beyond the boundaries the universe wants it to have. So there are some people I think have argued, and I don't know. I mean, I like the idea. It obviously doesn't fit with my own personal religious beliefs, but I like the idea of one of the interpretations that the alien, especially in this movie, is supposed to be almost kind of like and I'm not using like big G God, I'm using like a little g God, of like a divine retribution, like a divine cleansing of life is what the alien is supposed to be. And you get a lot of the imagery in this of it being called the beast or being called a dragon, or the way in the assembly cut, the way the Gallic character almost kind of worships the alien as you get a little bit later on into the movie. But the other thing, and I was trying to think about this earlier when I thought about the Thomas Hobbes quote about life being nasty, brutish, and short, and how that fits, I think, so well with the Alien movies. I just kept trying to think, all right, so in my own words, if I was going to sum up what I think the theme of the Alien movies, especially these three, like these first three movies, the theme of these first three movies is that the universe is antagonistic towards life, towards humanity, and I can sum it up with one phrase: even when you win, you lose. To me, that kind of sums up all of the first three, at least, Alien movies. Even when you win, you lose. Because Ripley, right? First movie, even when she thought she won, all of a sudden, the alien is still there. She's got to stop it. Like, even when she thinks she has won, at the end of the first movie, she thinks she's won. She's beat the alien. She's fine. What happens? She wakes up in the second movie, and it's been 57 years. Her daughter is dead. She's lost again. Like, she's lost everything. So even when she thought she had won, she lost. And then you have this whole movie. You have she finds a surrogate daughter. She kind of starts to fall for Corporal Hicks. She finds a new relationship with, or a better relationship with, an android that she would have hated the androids from before, like with Ash. She kind of redeems that a little bit, and by the end of that movie, yeah, she had to fight the alien queen, and you know, everybody's injured and half dead, but everybody's fine, and it's almost kind of, you end Aliens and it's almost very like soft focus and dreamlike as they're falling asleep. And then what happens in the next movie? She thought she won. Even when you win, you lose. She loses everything again. And I think that's, at least for me, the way I understand the Alien movies, is that's what you're supposed to take away, is that there's not a whole lot of hope here, and you just kind of have to keep carrying on, even knowing that there is no hope. Like, don't even wish for hope, because it's not going to happen. You just have to, if you're going to live, fight, claw, scratch, do whatever you need to do to keep living, but don't ever think that there's really any hope for you. Like, you are going to have to struggle in order to continue living, and even when you think you've won, you've still lost, which is why it doesn't bother me. And I loved the characters of Newt and Hicks and Bishop, and I love those characters, but it didn't bother me when they died at the beginning of Alien 3, because in my mind, I'm like, this is perfect. Ripley has been broken down again. Like, she's continually being broken down and changed as a character, and she has to, within the universe that is the Alien movies, this has to continually happen to her. Like, she has to keep getting everything taken away from her.
And it dovetails perfectly. Your take on all that dovetails perfectly into where she winds up, a place where people have absolutely no hope for anything.
Right.
So it's not like she's going to find some rallying cry from these people who have essentially decided to become lifers in a prison.
Yeah.
Like the end of the line.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's kind of in a nutshell. I mean, there's other things that I'll talk about as we go through the rest of the movie, but kind of in a nutshell, that's why I really like this movie, and that's why I think, and we've kind of joked around with Jason from the Shirley podcast, because I know he gets really upset at the fact that they die at the beginning of the movie. And I'm not saying that I don't understand that. I completely get, and when I saw it for the first time, I was like, oh man, I love those characters. Like, I love Hicks. I love these characters. It breaks my heart that they're dead. But for the purpose of staying true to the nature of these stories, I think they had to. I think you have to start, if Ripley is still your main character, I think you have to break Ripley down at the beginning of Aliens and at the beginning of Alien 3, I think you have to break her down so that she can progress as a character and move forward. And she is. By the time you get to, that's why I love her character in Alien 3. She is not the same Ripley. She's a fairly similar Ripley at the beginning of Aliens as she was in the movie Alien. By the time you get to Alien 3, she is a completely, she hasn't become some kind of like superhero, but she is a very changed person. And I think if you're going to continue moving the story forward, then you gotta break your main character down in a universe like this, where if that's part of the terror of the alien is that there's no hope, then that is a perfect way to start your movie. Kill everybody off so that she does not have any other resources other than herself.
So focusing on, oh, come on, the alien always wins, give me something new, is missing the point. That's just kind of a vehicle to advance the worldview.
I think it's just meant to be understood that the alien is always going to win.
Gotcha.
Like, I don't think you even question it. Like, the alien's going to win.
Oh, got it.
Maybe Ripley wins. So maybe if Alien 3 had ended differently, like maybe Ripley wins in the end. But I guarantee you, if we come back for an Alien 4, if they're staying true to the story as it has been so far, then she's got to lose everything again somehow and be put in a different situation in Alien 4.
Well, how many years till Alien Resurrection?
Was that 97? So 5 years maybe?
Hey, and also before you go on, were you quoting the Leviathan at the beginning of our podcast tonight?
Yeah, I was.
Dang, man, we're setting a tone. That's all I'm going with that, man.
Well, it's interesting, like the response of like, okay, so I don't know whether it was on a podcast or was in between a podcast recording or at the end of something, but we had gotten into a little kerfuffle about like I think I had angered a few people just because I was throwing out there like, hey, like maybe I didn't like this movie, and all I was just doing was just getting a rise out of John because he liked it so much. But it was more like I really didn't remember it. I remember I kept saying I only saw it once, and there might be a reason why I only saw it once, and I just kept kind of playing that off. And I think interestingly, like I bet you my experience back then was very different and kind of what Pat had kind of described, like that feeling, or like the feeling of like a cheap way out, like, oh, you couldn't get the actors, you couldn't sign a contract, so you're just going to write them off. Like sometimes you think that with movies where it's like, oh, this actor didn't want to come back, they didn't want to play the role, so you have to get rid of them, so you just got rid of them at the beginning of the movie like that. So back then I probably was more offended by sort of that, like, hey, you're more closely related to the characters because you have just seen Aliens, and now all of a sudden the time between the two movies isn't as great as it is now 20-something years later. 20-something years later, I did not have the same anger that they killed them in the first few minutes. Does that make any sense? Like back then, it was fresh. You knew them. In the distance of time now, like seeing this so many years later, decades later again, for the second time only, I was okay with them not being killed. Like I wasn't happy, but I was like, okay. And the tone, I think, you just in the opening sequence and the going back from the credits and then seeing the little pieces was a very kind of eerie, creepy sort of, it kind of sucked me back in. Like I think where I was like, oh, okay. And needless to say, like my previous joking around with you, like I might not have liked this, turned out to be false because I actually enjoyed this film.
Well, and to use your example of, it would be like if at the beginning of a Star Wars movie you killed off Han Solo and Chewbacca. That's where I think this is a little bit different, because in Star Wars it's not expected that you'd kill off a major character like a Han Solo or a Chewbacca, because it's not that kind of movie. But the Alien movies, I think, are specifically designed that way to have the theme of even when you win, you lose. Like, so I think
that
makes sense.
Everybody was surprised.
Yeah.
Everybody was surprised with the first Alien movie that Ripley wound up being the main character, because everybody thought it was going to be Dallas.
Right.
That he was going to be the last man standing. And so that was kind of a bait and switch with the audience, even with the original Alien.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the thing that, like I said, that some people might is you feel it, it's like that feeling. And I think back then, because it was, again, fresher, because it was shorter time between films, was the idea that you spent all the frustration. I think that's what maybe turned people. I'm just like looking back and saying that's probably what I experienced and other people experienced, was the frustration that, okay, you just went through all the trouble of these people surviving that last film, and then boom, just like that, they're gone in the opening credits. It felt insulting to a certain degree, probably back then, if you weren't thinking of, again, the realm that John is talking about of hopelessness, nihilism, and that whole sort of, that's what they're trying to create. Like, yeah, you did go through all that. You spent a whole hour, 2 hours of survival. Those people made it through, but they really didn't make it through. Right. And again, when you win, you lose. Like, you thought you won, but nope, you didn't.
Right.
And is
Kobayashi Maru.
Is this a bad comparison? Is this similar to the feel? And again, I haven't dived into all of the more recent ones or anything like that, but I know there's another one coming out, I guess this Halloween, is the Halloween films, where Michael Myers, no matter what you do, you can't kill him. He just keeps popping back in, and he's there to haunt Jamie Lee Curtis, and I hear like the new one is where it's like the end, they're calling it the end. I have no idea what it's going to be like, because I lost interest in those after time, but kind of like,
and nobody can blame you for that.
Yeah,
nobody can blame you for that.
So now I'm wondering, this new one, is it worth seeing because Jamie Lee Curtis is back in it? Is she just taking a paycheck, or is it going to have some sort of throw out all the middle crap that we've been seeing the last how many years and take the original and take like this end one, and will those two like do it justice? I don't know. But yeah, anyway, I'm just saying, like, the monster of Alien and Michael Myers, can't seem to kill him, can you? No matter what, they kind of keep appearing.
Well, and that's one of the other things that I do like. One of the other reasons I do really like Alien 3, and that I think it really is a just as worthy as I'm not going to say, if I were to look at the first three movies together, if I were to rank them, I'm not going to rank Alien 3 as my favorite of the first three Alien movies. I'm probably going to go, I might even go in order. I might go 1, 2, 3. However, there are times where I might even possibly flip-flop 2 and 3. Like, 1 is always going to be my favorite. Like, I really, really like the first Alien movie. There are times, and I love Aliens for the action movie that it is, but if I'm in the mood for a sci-fi horror movie, it's not Aliens. Like, I think of that as much more of an action. I like the movie, and we've talked about this before, I like the movie where there is the monster, even if the monster is mostly unstoppable. I like the movie where there is the one unstoppable monster because you just don't have what you need to stop this thing. Like in the first movie, they didn't have any weapons. It was one alien. Then you watch Aliens, and I love Aliens. I love that movie. However, you can mow down half a dozen aliens in a couple of seconds because you've got a pulse rifle with some grenades. So the aliens in that, other than when you just think about their sheer numbers, individually they become less terrifying. So then when you get back to, and I know we've talked about this before with like the Terminator movies, if you get back to your horror roots, because I think that's what they did well. We've talked about this. That's what they did well with Terminator was a horror movie. Terminator 2 was an action movie. Terminator 3 was a piece of crap. So they didn't get back to, I feel like in the Terminator movies, they didn't get back to what made it good in the first place. Whereas with the Alien movies, Alien is a horror movie. Aliens is an action movie. Alien 3 is back to being a horror movie, but you've changed it just enough that you've made something fresh out of it. So it's not just a rehashing. Like Terminator 3, I feel like is just a rehashing of everything else. It's another T-1000, but we've added guns to what it can build. And it's a woman she wears tight-fitting clothing, and that it just feels like it's not true to the original intent and tone and universe that was built in the first couple of movies. Whereas in Alien, I think it is. I think Aliens, Alien 3, and even Alien Resurrection. Like I think that there are definitely some problems with that one, but I can still be entertained by watching it. I'm not going to put that in with the first three movies. I don't like to lump those together as a 4-movie set. I like to think of Alien Resurrection as its own deal, and it's its own little island, and I will keep that separate from the first trilogy. Thank you very much.
Yep, that's where you and I will definitely have to part company, John, because my biggest defense for Alien 3 is it's not Alien Resurrection by any means.
That's also true. For me, it's a very steep drop off. Like once we get past Alien 3, it's like, all right, I'll be entertained, but I don't know that I'm going to seek out any of the other Alien movies after this. I'll even include Prometheus and Alien Covenant in that. Like I've watched each of those once, and I don't think I'll watch them ever again.
And that
full agreement.
That kind of makes me think of like normally you pose the question about ranking them and how do we rank them, and I have two feelings on this where it's like if I'm ranking them as a totality, like just like it's like of merit or of maybe more of a critical review. Yeah, I'll go 1, 2, 3. I think it just works in that order, and it makes sense. If you go by ranking them, which would be the ones that I would watch the most or repeat movies, it would be 2, 3, 1. 1 would be the last because it's a bit slower in terms of it's kind of like the opening chapter of your book. You know, you don't always read the opening chapter again, but like it's like you get to the action parts. So like if I wanted to, which one would I watch repeatedly? Like if it was on TV and go, oh, I'm gonna catch that one and finish this movie, 2, 3, 1. But in terms of the critical merit, 1, 2, 3.
Yeah. So we haven't even gotten beyond like the first 5 minutes of the movie yet, but as we kind of move on through this beginning part of the movie, she gets rescued. This is one of the things I like about the assembly cut a little bit better because of the scene where she gets rescued. I think there's just a lot of it is just with this assembly cut. It's shot better. Like you can clearly tell it's a better quality filmmaking in a lot of these shots that get used in the restored assembly cut. Clemens finds her on the beach. You know, you kind of immediately get a sense of what's going on here with the prison and the fact that they don't have a whole lot of technology available to them. They're using cattle to pull something out of the ocean that's there. It is, and much like that quote from Leviathan, this place is nasty and brutish. There's not a whole lot here that it's very savage. It's very,
desolate.
It's desolate. It's no hope. It's basically, this is the planet of no hope. I mean, the name of the planet is Fury. Like they nicknamed it Fury. So this is like, you've already got out in space. There's already things that are trying to kill you. And now you're on a planet where not only will the alien try to kill you, but the inmates might try to kill you too. So you've kind of getting it at both ends. There's really not a whole lot of hope for you. The one scene that I thought in particular is, and I think it's very emotional and very well shot, and the kind of back and forth between it really is kind of the creepiness of it is the whole scene of Newt's funeral kind of blended in with the birth of the alien busting out of if you saw the one version, there's the dog. If you saw the assembly cut, it's the ox that it bursts out of. And it's just, you've got Dylan giving his sermon at the funeral, and it kind of gets at the idea too of like, this place is, the world, the universe, whatever you want to call it, is a nasty, heartless, brutish place. Because he even says that. I wanted to pull it up to make sure I had it. When he starts in on his sermon for her funeral, he says, why are the innocent punished? Why the sacrifice? Why the pain? There aren't any promises, nothing certain, only that some get called, some get saved. She won't ever know the hardship and grief for those of us left behind. We commit these bodies to the void with a glad heart, for within each seed there is a promise of a flower. Within each death, no matter how small, there is always a new life, a new beginning. And mixed in with, obviously, as he's preaching the religious imagery, then you have the birth of the alien, which is, for all intents and purposes, if you want to call it anti-life, not to mix it in with the DC Comics movies, but yeah, if you want to refer to the alien as the anti-life, it's kind of the birth of the anti-life during the funeral of this young girl.
And I think isn't when she has the drop of blood too?
That's when she starts a little nosebleed once the alien is born. Yeah.
And I think Rob was saying about in the opening credits, and I'm trying to go back to why I wasn't, got to watch this repeat. And I don't think I hated it back then. I think I just was probably frustrated with some things. And while I thought, it was all right, it was okay. It wasn't like I'm going to keep watching. Again, trying to flash back and think what I thought. It's almost a movie I forgot about how I was reacting to it. But as I was watching, I can picture the younger me being frustrated with the fact that I kind of figured out through the opening credits, through the initial things of her nosebleed and certain things, that she was already carrying the alien. So like that's already, so I was kind of thinking, well, geez, if you're going to kind of spring this on a later, like some big revelation, it's like, I already know. So therefore I saw that as a weaker thing, but I don't think that's maybe not the attempt watching it the second time around.
No.
It's okay that you know it. Back then I was thinking, were they trying to hide it and they just couldn't do it, so therefore it's a weak script that we already had this figured out? Or was it we were supposed to know early on that this was the case? And I think watching it now, I felt more like they were okay with us knowing. They weren't trying to hide it. But what's interesting is when you mentioned the scene where they didn't want to have the alien be with her in the face and leave her go, where the alien spares her at that point, because then that's the giveaway. It almost feels like the studio was trying to do that. So I guess I'm confused on that now, because that makes me think, like when you said that trivia piece, like they didn't want her in the shot with the alien up by her face that becomes the iconic shot. They didn't want that because they didn't want it to give anything away. I'm like, but it's too late. We already knew that. Like you could figure that in the opening sequence. She survives and she's worried about the alien being in the girl, and it's like, look in the mirror, you know?
Yeah, I think that's the thing. Once you get through the autopsy scene with Newt, the cat's out of the bag.
Yeah.
You can't go back and erase everybody's memory.
It's not feeling great. And there's like all these sort of things happening to her, and I'm like,
and they very quickly try to explain it away. That with Charles Dance's character Clemens saying, the way you came out of cryogenics, sleep, the way you did. He was like, and she was like, oh yeah, I'm gonna be sick for a couple of weeks.
Yeah, it didn't work.
No, we all know.
Yeah, exactly. So I think back then as a younger 20, what was it? It was 92, 21. I was probably thinking like, oh, well, I was too smart for this and I figured this out. So therefore this movie must be kind of weak. Maybe I was thinking that, but, and again, I don't think I hated it back then. It just didn't register like a big imprint. So the second time around, 20 something years later, 30 something years later, I was okay with it, because it was like, no, I don't think they were trying to hide it. And if they were, it would be pretty bad if they were trying to hide it, thinking they're going to do that.
Well, and I think kind of also, it sticks with that whole idea. I'm going to keep repeating it. It's going to stick with that whole idea of even when you win, you lose. Because I think, and I'll jump ahead for just a second, I think that you go through the movie, and then even if you missed it, even if you missed all the clues, and you don't figure out until just before Ripley does that she's got the alien inside of her, she's got the queen inside of her, then you get to the point where you realize, as some of the characters do, oh, we've got a rescue ship coming. Oh, the rescue ship, they'll be able to come. Maybe they can get this thing out of her. Maybe there's a procedure. So you start to get that little bit of hope. So it's like, oh, maybe there's a chance that we'll win. We got this alien locked up. We won. Okay, yeah, but then you've got Galek, who is like religiously obsessed with the dragon, and he wants to go free the dragon. He wants the dragon. In the assembly cut, he has that line, and I'm trying to remember exactly what it was. Like, tell me what to do next. Like, once he frees the alien, he's like, tell me what to do now, or tell me what to do next. And so it's almost like a Renfield character.
It's like a
servant of Dracula, kind of a deal. And you thought you won because you locked this thing up, and now we can either kill it or we can wait for the company to come and they can kill it or whatever, because of course they would. Of course, why would the company not kill it? That's ridiculous. You think you've won, you haven't won, because Galek messes it up and he lets the alien out again. And even jumping forward to the end of the movie, like, oh, the company's here. Look, they brought doctors with them. I can tell they're doctors because they're all in white. And they're going to be able to remove this thing. Ripley is going to be saved. It's all going to be okay.
The guy looks like Bishop.
Right. The guy looks like Bishop. No, even if you think you've won because you think the team of doctors is here, you haven't won, because Ripley knows exactly what the company is going to do with this. And for her, like, she has no choice. Like, there's no hope, because if she hasn't figured it out before then, which she has, she knows she's going to have to die. Like, she knows she's going to have to somehow take this thing with her, because otherwise, if the company gets a hold of it, everything is over.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's something a lot of audiences back then were struggling with, is that every beat of the movie is marching Ripley toward what ultimately happens, no matter whether you saw the theatrical cut or not. And that's something that was so eye-opening to me, seeing the assembly cut, was that whole thing with Gullet. That was almost completely excised from the theatrical cut.
Yeah.
In fact, it practically is.
It practically is, because I was going to say, you don't really get that vibe so much from here. Where you
no, their trapping of it never happened.
Yeah,
right.
They never trapped it. It's them all right after the big explosion and everything went wrong. It's them standing at the entrance where the thing was supposedly trapped, and they're all going, "Now what do we do?" And then it's Ripley realizing that she's pretty much doomed.
Yeah. Yeah, when you were describing that, I was saying, I didn't see that, and that's a big difference, because I didn't see it. I saw the theatrical version, and I didn't get the whole, yeah. And going back to that opening sequence again, we were just talking about how it's not revealed. It's so quite obvious, like, because you see her face, and you see her grimacing, and her kind of like and it totally, something's going on. You're not seeing anything lower than her face, but it's like, you get the idea, So from watching it, like, it was super clear, like, something's going on, and why is she alive, and there's a reason. So,
yeah. Well, so as we get towards the end of the movie, we've got I'm calling this one scene, "Get the Lead Out." This is the scene where they are working to trap the alien for a second time, and then they're going to dump hot lead all over it. If they can get it kind of trapped in this piston area, they're going to dump hot lead all over it. And Dylan ends up making kind of that final sacrifice and, trying to fight the alien single-handedly, or at least hold it there for long enough for Ripley to climb out of where she is, and for them to be able to dump the molten lead on top of it. And again, even when you win, you lose. They dump all the lead on there. Everybody's super excited because, yay, they've won. And then it comes bursting back out of the hot lead again, and then they have to douse it with the cold water to then cause it to do its alien exploding head moment. And then, again, following the same theme, you have supposedly the rescue team shows up, but Ripley, knowing that the rescue team is not so much a rescue team, she knows kind of what needs to be done, even with a friendly face showing up, who I'm calling Bishop 2 Electric Boogaloo. He is very clear. I mean, at the very beginning, he's talking to her very sweetly and as if, yes, they are there for her. And they have not. If you've watched the other two movies before this, you know very well the company really could care less about the people that work for the company. She mentions in this movie, she's like, nope, the first time, crew expendable. The second time, they sent Marines. They were expendable too. So they really don't care about any kind of people. And that's one of the other messages of the Alien movies is, don't ever think that the Alien movies are friendly to big business or if you want to make it even broader, to capitalism or anything like that. It's very much companies don't care about you. Companies are there for their bottom line, for the dollar, for whatever you want to call it, but they are not going to, at any point in time, they are very willing to basically screw you over so that they can continue to make profit. And so that is very, very clear. And you kind of see the moment when Bishop then kind of changes, like when he knows it's starting to get to be hopeless, where Ripley has separated herself, and then he starts in with because before it was of course, we're going to remove it. We're going to kill it. We can't allow it to live. What would happen if we allowed it to live? And then like 5 seconds later, imagine what we could learn from it. Like, it is all of a sudden he's switched and he's in full on, I need it mode. Like, I have to have it kind of a deal. And, and the guy who's basically been a coward the entire time, Aaron, the kind of like deputy warden or whatever you want to call him, who is Rick Olay from the Star Wars Episode 1, The Phantom Menace. So everybody's favorite pilot, Captain Obvious, from the Star Wars Episode 1 movie. He gets gunned down at the very end there. So it's just Ripley and the one guy left. And, she has him position this platform so that she can take a dive off of it into the furnace. And it just... There are a couple of things I remember about this movie. Like, there's some moments in particular that I remember about this movie. One being the one where the alien comes right up to Ripley's face in that one scene. Very iconic scene. The other ones being the funeral scene. That's the other one. The third one being the just guttural scream when Bishop, or whatever his name is, yells no. Like when she starts to dive off of that platform and he knows he's lost. Like his one opportunity to get this specimen, he has lost it, and just he grabs the fence and just screams no. And then the kind of the way the music swells at that point as Ripley is falling off here. I mean, there's not too many times that it's happened before, but I would say there's not too many times where you're going to end the third movie of a trilogy by having your hero dive off into a furnace at the end of the movie. Yeah, you're going to have heroes sacrifice themselves from time to time, but, I think after everything she had been through, I'm sure audiences are sitting there going, well, I really hope something good happens to Ripley after she's been through all this. Well, if you do, you might not have been paying attention to the movies, because you probably should have known from the very beginning that we're not going to have a happy ending. Like, this is not, alien movies don't have happy endings.
And I think that might be why it is such a split reaction from people, is because we're used to blockbuster action films with these type of heroes always finding a way and surviving, and Aliens doesn't do that. It doesn't play by those rules, and that's a shock to people. So I think back then that was another thing. You walk away and you're like, wait, she died. But there's got to be a way. There should have been a way that she should have figured something out. Like, she survived. We thought she was going to die in the first one. She didn't. She thought she was going to die in the second. She didn't. And then all of a sudden, now this time you're actually going to let her die. So back then, as a younger person, I probably was like a little bit like, oh, that kind of stinks. I want her to survive. But now I like, and I kind of appreciate the 1, 2, 3. Although, yes, the franchise has dragged on and they've done different ways and resurrection and everything else. But if I just take it as 1, 2, 3 and you call it a day, I'm like, that's a good 1, 2, 3. And I respect that. Kind of like Breaking Bad as a TV series. Like the problems with things like Lost, the problems with The Walking Dead, they just keep dragging on and they're milking them for all they can do, and they lose what they had, like how many people, even in Walking Dead, like, no spoiler alert for that one, but how many people are really dying major characters? They don't do that anymore. But man, that was the first thing in the first few seasons. It was like, and I haven't seen Game of Thrones, but I hear that that's like one of the things about Game of Thrones. People are like, anybody can go. And when you're on your edge of the seat, you're getting attached to characters. You like characters, and then boom, they're gone. It's like there's a kind of a gutsy sort of decision to do that, because you might tick people off, but at the same time, it makes it feel you don't know that the comfort of the formula of hero always survives. It's kind of like you knew who were the people who in Star Trek wasn't going to get killed. It's always the guys that you went down there. It's like, and it could still be enjoyable. And I think we get accustomed to that type of formula, that this one breaks the rules, and it is that nihilism, it is that desolateness, and it is that ability to just be like feel like, ugh. If this is Fury 161, I don't want to see what Fury 162 is like. I don't want to go there.
Yeah, and I mean, it like John was talking about with No Hope. If you remember the name of the colonists, the terraforming center in Aliens was LV-426, which was also known as
Hadley's Hope.
Hadley's Hope.
Yeah.
And Hadley's Hope was decimated, and that's what pulled Ripley to go there in the first place. She did not want to go. She was a reluctant recruit to the mission, and she was not invested in doing anything but making sure that they were going to go in there and exterminate the aliens. And the only reason that she found a reason at that point to continue to see the mission through, when it was all starting to fall apart, was because they found Newt.
Yeah.
If things started to fall apart, I think she would, and they had not found Newt, that she might have expired earlier on in that film. And I mean, as John said, she is definitely just a completely broken character by the time you get to Alien 3. And if you think about it, we have no idea how much longer she had been in cryosleep. She could be 100 years old by now, by Earth standards. And She lost what she had found to keep her going before, and she gets to this planet, and I could not think of any other ending for this character at this point other than to end the movie or end the series in my mind in this manner. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. And then the other thing too is like in this, when you do start to get they play. Okay, so like you just said, Newt I think represents hope, something for her to fight for, something to stay alive for, and then that's gone. And then there's sort of this kind of connection with Clemens, the doctor. And then when he goes, it's just like, I gotta admit, like this, I didn't remember that from the first one. So all of a sudden I see the thing behind the curtain, and it's just like boom, that's it, and he's gone. It's like, wait a second, I thought this would be the new Hicks, who, if you're gonna kill him, it's gonna be at the very end. If you kill him at all, but this guy's gonna survive along with her. Like these are the two now who are gonna be somehow surviving this. And all of a sudden he just goes like that. Like no, it was like
this was the gender swap where it's now the guy that dies right after they sleep together.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Like this time I did not remember that he gets killed.
Yeah.
So when it happened, I was like, whoa, okay. Yeah.
Now the one thing so you would have the version you watched, Dennis, was the theatrical one. So the one thing that I would keep from the theatrical is right here at the very end of the movie is, and to me, like that was the best possible way to end the movie. And it still fits with my whole idea of even when you win, you lose, because even if there is no hope, even if it's all about nihilism and all of this, where it does kind of give you a little teeny tiny bit of a hopeful ending, even though it's not, because pretty much everybody's dead, is when she dives off that platform. In the version you saw, see, that's what I don't like about the assembly cut, is they changed what happens to her after she dives off that platform. In the theatrical cut, the queen bursts out of her chest, and she grabs the queen and holds it close to her as she falls. The alien never bursts out of her chest in the assembly cut.
Oh, okay.
And so for me, I'm like, I saw the theatrical version first, and so I remember that scene, and I remember thinking that is her way of, so you have taken everything from me, but in this one instance, Alien Queen, where you think you've won because you just burst out of my chest, you've actually lost, and I'm going to hold you close to me, and this is the one little inkling of hope that I have, is I am now going to deprive you of the death and destruction that you would have caused. So if you want to say something hopeful about humanity, is that even if the universe, life, whatever you want to call it, even if everything is out to get you, even if everything is against you, there is some hope in that Ripley still kept fighting. Like there could have been any number of times where she just gave up at any point during this movie, but she kept fighting. So if there's one thing about humanity that is redeeming in the end of this, is that she gets, I don't know if you want to call it revenge or whatever you want to call it, but she is able to
score.
Yeah. She is able to kind of even the score and take that alien queen with her as she dives into the furnace. So if you want to give it a little bit of a hopeful ending. Yeah, Pat, go ahead.
Well, but it's really, if we are to, then there's going to be an alien for the alien still going to find a way, right? Like, and I'm not trying to poke holes in it, but it's like, that's kind of the thing, is like, it doesn't matter that she did that. She should have just let the alien queen go, because there's going to be another alien in another ship where the other guys, do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because
then it's somebody else's responsibility to keep fighting.
Got it.
It's because this is Ripley's story. This is like the ending of Ripley's story. This is how Ripley dealt with this particular threat. And I would argue that in the end she won. Like, even though she lost, so that kind of flips my whole thing around. Even though she lost, she won.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the end of her. And that's the end of her story. She beat the alien. She, like, the aliens that she needed. Like, they nuked the site from orbit, because that's the only way to be sure. They nuked the site from orbit. So those aliens on that planet supposedly gone. And And this supposedly was the only alien left. Like, they killed the alien that had burst out of the ox. So that one is blown up. That one's gone. Supposedly the only one left, as far as she knows, the only one left is this queen that's in her chest. And if she takes that with her, then in her mind, the threat is gone. You know, she's even the score. She's taken care of this. We're all good now. Could there be other aliens somewhere else in the universe, in the galaxy, on other planets, waiting for someone to absolutely. And that's where it kind of leaves it open to, if you were going to do another set of alien movies, fine, but it's not Ripley's story anymore. Then it's somebody else's story, you know. And if you chose to do that, sure, you could leave it open to be able to do that. But I think, as Dennis was saying, I think this is the perfect way to wrap up Ripley's story. I don't know, for it to be, for me, I know for some people it's not satisfying. For me, for it to be as satisfying an ending as it is, I think this is the only way that you could have ended it.
Absolutely.
And I think you said if they choose to do that, I think if you also choose to participate in that, meaning as a viewer, you can just I know you're saying like there's a 4 and there's the aliens come back or they're different places. I can still just look at it and throw that all out and say, this is a separate thing. This is 1, 2, 3, and it's done. And Ripley, they're not writing a loophole for Ripley to somehow come back other than the way they did in Resurrection. You know what I'm saying? You could just ignore that. You could just say 1, 2, 3, boom, done. And in my eyes, this is the original intent, the original story. This is, and anything else is people trying to just kind of make some money off the franchise. But the heart of it is 1, 2, 3. And that's it.
So Ripley has to, so it's not just that, well, the alien's always going to win. It's just
Ripley has to. The alien didn't win. In the end,
but Ripley has to sacrifice herself.
Sacrificed herself. It did get her, but she got it. So you can look at that as a win-win-win. You know.
I think if the aliens, if you needed to keep a scorecard for the aliens to have won, then the aliens still need to be alive by the end of the movie. Whereas the alien is dead. Ripley is dead because she had to do that to take it with her. The aliens, as far as we know, every last alien is now dead, and there are still humans left alive. Now, these humans are not great people because they're from the company, and I think there's one prisoner left.
Morse.
Yeah, Morse. Morse was the one prisoner left.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, you don't have, the survivors are not the cream of the crop, but at the very least, humanity is still there. So if there is some hope at the end of all this, is that we faced this unstoppable monster and humanity came out, even if you're keeping the scorecard, humanity came out, they scored that game-winning field goal at the end. It wasn't by much, but we won.
Yeah. Worst case, it's a draw.
It's not Star Wars. We're not shooting off fireworks at the end of all this and toppling statues, but we made it, kind of.
Worst case, it's a draw.
Right. Not unscathed.
It reminds me of the Norm Macdonald. What was it? Norm Macdonald had the quote because with the cancer thing, and it was, I'm pretty sure I'm not a doctor, but I'm pretty sure if you die, the cancer dies at the same time. That's not a loss because they see people lost their battle with cancer. It's like, no, that's a draw. And that was his idea. And that was one of the things he had said or whatever about it. And it was just, so I kind of think in this case, it applies to, I mean, her. And I got to see now the assembly ending because like you said, they don't show that. I think that's like one of the cooler scenes is right. It, like you said, it's like, here she is slowly going down, almost kind of Lord of the Rings, going down in the lava with the fire behind, slow motion. And she's just like this. And then all of a sudden, eventually, like you see it explode out, like it's going to escape. So for example, you think she's going to end it. And then all of a sudden it's like, it's making a fighting last chance to get out. And you're like, uh-oh, it's going to like burst out and survive. And then she just pulls it back in, almost in a weird kind of context of a baby, pulling it close like a baby, but at the same time killing it, which is just a weird sort of vibe to it. And that visual at the end was very, I think, pretty profound, I guess, or pretty interesting. And it was like, no, like we've been through three movies of hell together and you're going with me and this is it and it's done. So I had a feeling of completeness and finish when it was over that I was like, oh, I did not experience that back then. Probably because I was selfish and wanted more action to continue and the hero to survive. And I think as a more, hopefully, somewhat mature person, I feel like, and as somebody who likes the whole writing process, I respect this more than her somehow magically surviving.
Yeah, and almost everything that I've looked up in the past couple of days preparing for what I thought was going to be a slog, a knockdown drag out fight. There's a lot of people who have come around, and mainly it is because of the assembly cut being available, that a lot of people's initial reactions of Newt and Hicks, and for the most part Bishop, disappearing in the first act, a lot of people have kind of forgiven it because they've gone back and looked. If you look at it as, we all know that this is the end of Ripley's story, it's a movie like, what is she going to do? And there's so much dialogue, and especially from Charles S. Dutton's character Dylan, that he's talking about, we've all given up on our lives, people have given up on us. There's so much through lines of, if you've given up, what are you going to do to make a final stand? Are you really just going to go out like a chump? Are you going to go out on your knees? Or are you going to go down swinging? If you know that this is the end of the line for you, and all these guys have accepted that this is the end of the line, and Ripley is almost accepted it. It's at the end of the line. She even asked Dylan to take her life at one point because she can't do it. If you go out with a fighting chance, and I agree with John so much that as much as I love what they've done with the producer's cut, assembly cut, whatever you want to call it, that one scene of Ripley just saying, "Nope, you're not getting away. It's not happening." And
I don't even think she opens her eyes.
Nope. She's like, "Nope."
Yeah, it's like she
takes it down with her.
Yeah, it's like, obviously, like she said, it's like it's ripping out, and there's no opening of eyes. Like, oh my God, no panic. It's just literally like almost a calmness and sureness that no, no chance.
Yeah.
And weirdly, in a way, she's almost at peace for the first time in all the movies.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So again, I know that, like I said, I initiated some possibility of fireworks from this from before, and I was just messing with you because I'm like, I really don't remember this. But I'm like, I will watch it though, and I will see it again. And it's interesting, the whole podcast experience of what we do, and we go back and watch movies from our youth and movies from back then, and you watch them through a different filter of life experiences, or just a different mature place, and a different. And I think it was probably, like I said, going back, I didn't hate it back then. I just was like, eh. And I was probably just more dismayed that, like, okay, Ripley died, and it was just kind of like, oh, and I had it figured out. And I knew this. So I just was probably like, I was just looking for things because I wasn't happy with what they did then, because you wanted more of the roller coaster. And then if you look at it more as a book or more as a story, now I actually hate when people drag things on, and that's why I'm a little nervous about even like Stranger Things, because I'm like, oh, are we pushing it a season too far? Are we going to destroy all this? Like I'm worried about that now. I liked Breaking Bad the way they finished it. It's like, you finished it, thank you. Don't just keep dragging things on and sucking it for the advertisement dollars. And I'm more that person now, where back then maybe I would have been like, oh, let's get another season. I don't know. I think you just look at it and approach it like you respect the story or the art form more of like, it does come to a nice completion the way they did it. So,
well, and I don't want to pretend that I don't understand why people wouldn't like this movie. Like, I totally get it. I totally understand why somebody would not like this movie. You're talking with Jason from the Shirley podcast. I totally get it. Totally understand why he doesn't like this movie. I think, and if he wants to call in and let us know for certain, but I think it really all hinges upon that initial death at the beginning of the movie. And I totally understand that. Like, that is a 100% valid reason for not liking this movie. That's just, when I think about this movie, that's not a hang up for me. Like, that's, well, I look at, to me, my understanding of these movies and my understanding of the through line of all three of these movies is that makes total sense. When you think about this universe, you think about it, if you want to think about it as like a multiverse, in this universe, everything is hopeless. And that is how the Alien movies have been. Maybe that's not, like, in real life, I don't think everything is hopeless. Like me as an individual, I don't go through life thinking that everything is hopeless and I have to claw and struggle and do whatever I can to just fight just to live. That's not me personally, but my understanding of these movies is in that universe, it is a very hopeless universe, and you will have to fight, claw, struggle, do whatever you can to survive because everything else is totally against you surviving. Everything is against life and humanity and all of that. You know, it's not, I'm not sitting here going, oh, I love these movies because that totally jives with my personal philosophy. It's just that's my understanding of these movies, and I absolutely appreciate it from a storytelling standpoint, from the fact that these three movies had three different directors, and still, my feeling, still very much kept to the heart of what I think makes the Alien movies what they are.
And taking it just a tiny step further, the character of Ripley, she is to me the original. You want to point to a movie where there's a positive female role model, a positive female protagonist. She is the epitome to me. I always say I would love to have an Ellen Ripley at my side if things go terribly sideways than somebody who's just crying and shrieking in a corner somewhere, or Bill Paxton's character in Aliens. It came over, man, it came over. I don't want that guy. I don't care if he's a Marine. If he's losing it, I'd rather have somebody who's calm, cool, and collected. And she's just a person. She's just a space trucker in the first movie. In the second movie, she's a space trucker with experience. By the end of it, she's a heroine. And then you get to this one, she's like, man, I've been through this. She's weary, she's worn out. I mean, it's a perfect character arc. I mean, there are very few characters that we get in cinema that are clearly well drawn and consistent. I mean, she's not going and wiping the floor with prisoners or the alien in any of these movies. She is a human being that just happens to have characteristics about her that shine through when they need to shine through.
You know, I think it's just also like there's a big like what you said about her being one of the best heroines. I agree. If you were to have a list, she's got to be, I think, number one. I'm trying to. I can think of some 2s, 3s, 4s, 5s, but I think number one I would go back to her. But I think it's also a daring choice, not daring, but like with the theme of nihilism. Once you accept that, like John said, then this movie makes sense. If you don't, and you fight that, because I think our natural urge is to have hope and to have all these things. And like you said, personally, we may not feel that the universe is that way, but this story and this environment and this plot and this setting has that. It's essential character. Even from like what the opening tagline of Alien with "in space, no one could hear you scream." I mean, like that's just like a haunting sort of.
No hope.
Yeah, no hope whatsoever. No matter what, you can scream as loud as you want. No one's going to hear you. And then to end it where you don't even have like the surrounding cast of Marines, people you can root for and root along. You have rapists and murderers and the most despicable little end of the line guys on a very end of the line planet. It's like there is no bottom really from here. You are as low as you're going to go. You've landed on somewhere where it's like you're surrounded with. So I think you didn't even have characters that you could, other than the doctor, I don't think there's anyone else that you really kind of are like pulling. Charles Dutton's character,
Dylan,
like, yeah, you definitely like him. But other than that, like everybody else is like, these guys are just creeps and criminals. And it's like, but you do kind of feel for them in a way. But at the same time, they put you in a spot where they want almost like, you almost want to feel guilty for feeling like these guys should survive.
Yeah, and another scene in the assembly cut is one of her attempted rapists gets a redeeming moment. And I'm going back and watching that. I'm still like, no, let him go. No.
Yep. So it's just an icky sort of feeling. It's like you want to shower.
Yeah. In
the whole environment, like even where the guy throws that, there's like some bugs and stuff. And it's like they're talking about you got to shave your head because of the lice. I mean, it's just you're in an icky place, a very uncomfortable place that they put you in. So I think that might be another reason why people didn't like it because no one likes to be in that kind of place.
It's a dour movie. I mean, it really is.
If you have a depressing sort of downward like environments, like a lot of people like don't like that. They don't want that, you know. And this just happens to take place in one of the most ultimate downer places. So
we are nihilists, Lebowski. We believe in nothing. Yeah, nothing. Say what you will about the tenets of National Socialism, dude. At least it's an ethos, but nihilists.
There you go. All right. Well, we've got some 3 questions. Do we have anything else we want to say about this one before we get into the 3 questions? I could have talked about how this fits into, like, as we move into the 90s and, like, the general, like, 90s sense of nihilism just in culture and everything else. But that would be like a whole other half hour to the show. So we could just, we'll save that. Somebody can call in if they want to, and they can share some thoughts on that. But we can talk about that another time.
Yeah.
All right. If we're ready for 3 questions, I think there is some hope for our 3 questions.
He asks each traveler 5 questions.
3 questions.
What were they, psychos?
We all go a little mad sometimes.
Quid pro quo. I tell you things, you tell me things.
I'm not interrupting anything, am I? You look deep in thought.
So I'll ask you the questions and then we'll see, all right?
So one of the things I was going to point out earlier is that clearly we all came very prepared for the Alien 3 show, because I just went and got a haircut the other day. There's not a whole lot of hair on this podcast. There's some facial hair, but there's not a whole lot of hair on this podcast. So we all came very prepared for the Alien 3 discussion.
No lice here.
All right. Question number 1. What is your favorite prison movie?
Really quick, John, you just said that there's not a lot of hair in this, but, you know, there's probably a lot of viewers who don't know what we look like. And with our voices, they may have had this very handsome, you know, kind of vision of who we are, and you just destroyed it.
Okay.
You just made it more nihilistic for us.
You know, Dennis, my hair is
my long,
nasty, brutish, and short. Yeah. Yeah, all of our hair is nasty, brutish, and short. What's your favorite prison movie?
Somebody else going first.
Well, I would say the obvious. I mean, The Shawshank Redemption. But if I would pick one that's not so obvious, I would say Brubaker with the Robert Redford.
Mm-hmm.
And it actually has a Alien connection because Yaphet Kotto is in that.
Oh, nice.
Very, very good movie. Robert Redford comes into a prison, and for about the first 40 minutes of it, he's undercover, and he kind of reveals himself after he's taken his time to observe all the problems that are going on in prison. He reveals that he's the new warden and starts setting everything right. Great movie, but hands down, Shawshank Redemption's my favorite prison movie of all time.
I also had Shawshank on my list until my wife reminded me of one of my other favorite movies of all time, the 2002 Count of Monte Cristo. So I am going to go with that one.
I'm waiting for Pat here.
Yeah, I too, like Shawshank is the first one that comes to mind. You were talking about Robert Redford, and he was also, there was one about, he was in a military prison, and he was like a general that got put in the prison and like inspired the soldiers to remember their duty and everything. And I wish I remember the name of it. I just thought of it when you mentioned it. The guy from The Sopranos, Tony Soprano, was in it. And anyways, that one was a really good one, but Robert Redford was in there. If we're talking prison, I suppose it's a bit of a stretch if I say like The Great Escape.
Yeah,
right? Because
that's what you're going to go to. I was waiting for you because I thought that was, yeah.
Okay, I was going to.
I think it counts. I don't know.
I figured that's what you were going to say.
Okay.
Prison, motorcycle, prison.
Yeah. I mean, I'd have to go with McQueen and all that, but I guess I'd say The Great Escape. The other one I'd want to throw up there would be Escape from Alcatraz with
Clint Eastwood, yeah.
Clint Eastwood is really good. Anyways, I should let Dennis get in there before I go. But yeah, if I can name, if it's any prison, that's a no-brainer for me. Great Escape will always be the top.
Right, so I'm good then. So you guys have mentioned ones that I were in my top 5. Everything else, even like top 2, like Shawshank's really, The Green Mile is another honorable mention for me. Wait, John, did you go?
Yeah, I said Count of Monte Cristo.
Okay, so then I could say mine. I'm going to go with my favorite, which is Cool Hand Luke. Cool Hand Luke, favorite prison movie.
That's solid.
It's one.
That's a great one.
Yeah, but like, man, Shawshank is Green Mile. Those are like that. I mean, and I was going to say Great Escape too. I mean, I thought of that. I'm like, is it? Because they didn't really commit a crime though. So is it really a prison or is it more of their prison?
What's this?
It's a prison.
Great Escape. So that's why I was.
That's why I thought that one was borderline. So that's why I put. That's why I put the Escape from Alcatraz in there.
Yeah. Alcatraz with Clint Eastwood, also a good one. Dead Man.
Well, we can get into a whole social commentary thing, but you don't have to commit a crime to be in prison.
That's true.
So,
well, In the Name of the Father. Then you can go to The Name of the Father with Daniel Day-Lewis. That's also a good one.
Well, then I'm naming Matrix because we're already in a prison. the thought is, the mistake is that you think you can escape from the prison. What about, if we're going prisoner...
Hold on, Pat. Hold on. You've been Pat Splay. There we go.
There it is. What about the one with Obi-Wan Kenobi where they're on like the Earth version of Rura Penthe, where they're building Bridge on the River Kwai? That could be another one.
Yeah.
But again, that's Prisoner of War. That's
you guys all went. You went.
I was going to say that John was going to say Ernest Goes to Jail.
No, I was going to say The Longest Yard was one of my runner-ups.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Dennis, did you mention none?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, that's a great one. Not Steve McQueen.
So you guys are listing like all these dramatic prison movies, and you're sitting here going, "I bet John chooses Ernest Goes to Jail."
That's right.
What are you trying to say?
John's quoting Hobbes within the first like 3 minutes of the thing. I'm like, oh my God.
Right.
Okay, so
we just spent an hour and a half talking about the tenets of nihilism, and I'm quoting Thomas Hobbes' Leviathan, and you're sitting here going, I bet John chooses the Ernest movie.
The timeout quarter in kindergarten with the finger paints. Yeah.
Well, question 2 is going to be near and dear to all of our hearts. Who is your favorite bald movie or TV character? Pat, I feel like you and I might have the same answer.
I do, but I just went like completely blank. And I was like totally brainstorming. Why am I going completely blank?
I don't know.
It's a toss-up for me. Walter White from Breaking Bad or Jean-Luc Picard.
Yeah.
Mine was Jean-Luc Picard. I threw a little Darth Vader in there because he is technically bald underneath all that stuff. But my two that I was kind of back and forth between are Captain Picard or the Lex Luthor from the Superman animated series played by Clancy Brown. Is there anybody bald in Ernest Goes to Camp?
You would know.
Lyle Alzado was eventually. Too soon.
Professor Xavier.
Yes.
Yeah, you do. Professor X.
Pinhead from the Hellraiser movies. Which, by the way, I don't know if I mentioned this to you guys or not. New Hellraiser movie, Pinhead is a female. And I haven't watched it yet. And it's on Hulu, which is owned by Disney, which means Pinhead is a Disney princess now.
Well played, John. I have actually seen it. I strongly recommend it. And it doesn't matter that Pinhead is a female or not because it's simply the Hell Priest.
Okay.
And it's actually much closer to the original novel.
It good? Okay, I haven't seen it yet. It's on my list to see. Yeah. That's on the movies that I really, really want to watch and I haven't seen yet are I wanted to see the new Hellraiser and I wanted to see the new Predator movie, that Prey. I have not watched that one yet, but it looks good. I want to watch it in the which native language is it that you can watch it in? Don't
So
watch that.
it's poorly dubbed. It's poorly
is
dubbed.
it? Okay. All right.
Yeah. Watch it the way you would normally watch a movie.
Okay.
And Prey is a 10 out of 10. I would put it right up there with the original Predator.
Okay.
Oh, that's good to know.
All right.
Okay, so I'm missing a whole bunch of like.
Yeah. Who's your Baldy?
Well, I mean, like the list. I just did the Google, and it's like, okay, Furiosa from Fury Road, Okoye, who is one of my favorite Marvel characters, like all these people, and then like, hello, anybody that The Rock. Well, not anybody, because usually sometimes The Rock has hair, but anyone Jason Statham plays, right? So the transporter, I guess, of all his characters, that would have been my favorite. But yeah, I don't. Like I said, I was looking at these guys all day, but just totally drew a blank when it came time to list them.
You're not going with Lieutenant Ilia from Star Trek: The Motion Picture?
Yeah, Lieutenant Ilia, but I mean, as a awesome character, but as like a favorite character.
Lobot.
Yeah, Lobot was good. General Okoye is pretty cool.
A lot of choices. All right. Question number 3. Final question. What animal? So we did learn as a result of this movie that the alien takes on some characteristics based on whatever type of creature it bursts out of. And they kind of took this to the extreme a little bit with some of the toys that they released in the early 90s. There was was it going to be called Operation Alien? There was supposed to be a cartoon that was going to come out. And so they started to bring out a bunch of these toys of like, they had the snake alien and the gorilla alien and the rhino alien and like all these alien animal hybrids. And then in the comic books, they started doing the same thing. Like if the alien burst out of a whale, then it was going to be like this aquatic alien thing or stuff like that. So what animal would you like to see a xenomorph animal hybrid of?
An elephant.
That'd be a good one.
It would be terrifying, but it would be really slow moving.
Does it have a little mouth at the end of its trunk?
Yeah, bonus trunk.
Does it has a smaller trunk that comes out of the normal trunk? Okay. That's disturbing.
It is. It would absolutely be terrifying, but think of it would be the slowest moving xenomorph. Mm-hmm. You might be able to escape it.
My daughter's choice was anteater. Like, I don't even know where that came from, but I think it might have had something to do with the tongue thing, maybe. I don't know. Yeah, that was her choice. Not quite an animal, but I always liked in the comic books. I'm not 100% sure that I care for how it was done in the movie because I just try to ignore that movie. In the comic books, I did enjoy it. One of the first times they ever showed an alien bursting out of a predator. And it was kind of a alien predator mix, so that had the little mandibles and all that. So that was kind of fun. The other one I will point out is I saw a picture of this, and I don't think I have it with me right now. So if you guys want to Google it at some point so you can see it, he has created an image of what would Kermit the Frog look like if he was an alien. I saw this one online recently.
I saw that and I laughed out loud and then found myself trying to scrub my brain.
Yep. My daughter was looking for Muppet stuff the other day, so I think I Googled it and I texted it to her.
Yeah, that's okay. Pretty good.
I mean, it's not easy being green, but
Mm-mm.
Not be as scary though. Smiling as he comes out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, there's no hope for you. And in space, no one can hear you scream.
Mm-hmm.
What animals you got? What do you want to mix?
I thought it'd be interesting to see what a giraffe would look like. I just was thinking it'd be weird because of the long neck.
Mm-hmm. That'd be kind of creepy.
Yeah, and then I was trying to figure out something that would fly.
Yeah, flying that would be cool. Almost go kind of like the
an alien that could fly, like little, yeah, I mean, like just differently,
like an alien eagle or something.
Yeah,
vulture.
That'd be a good one. I did see so you could do like Google image searches for like alien hybrid type things, and like somebody had mixed. I think they had like a Jurassic Park alien hybrid. It was like a alien T-Rex or something like that. Yeah, so there's a whole bunch. If you look on there, some people have done these pretty elaborate sketches and drawings of what these alien hybrids would look like. All right, Pat, did we get yours?
It would look weird too.
Man, I don't know. How about a Rancor, an alien Rancor?
That'd be fun.
Does that count? That'd be fun.
Yeah.
You know, I like the flying approach. You know, give me something new. Like I could say, like, hey, an alien frog or something, or an alien turtle or something like that. But I mean, I think give it kind of the spoilers. Gremlins 2. Give it the Gremlins 2 thing. You know, like show me something. Show me something new. I like that one. I find intriguing.
Yeah. A bat.
An alien bat.
Alien bat. That'd be cool.
They definitely have one in that Kenner series that they came out with, because I had.
Okay.
Was there an alien bat? Okay.
Yep.
I remember. I think I had the rhino and I had the snake. I don't think I ever got the gorilla, and then I couldn't remember what other ones they had beyond that.
Yep, I had quite a few of them. Didn't have all of them, but my favorite one was the Queen, because she was pretty big for that series.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have her sitting on a shelf over here somewhere. All right. Well, I think I would say we've done justice to Alien 3 tonight. So if you have listened to this episode and you've thought, well, I've never seen Alien 3 before, and now I'm intrigued, I'd like to go watch it, definitely try to seek out the assembly cut. Like if you can find that 2010 version that is the most up to date, has as much of it kind of built back in as you can possibly find, that would be the one to watch. And I would really recommend, I think, to get the full experience of these movies. You don't have to do it all in one day, but I'd recommend watching them back to back. I'd go watch Alien, watch Aliens, watch Alien 3, and I think that really gives you a good sense of how, at least in my opinion, a good sense of how I think that these are really good continuations of each other, and why I really think that Alien 3 is a great way, a near perfect way to wrap up the Alien trilogy. So if you have not found it yet, Dennis, I think you said you were on like Amazon Prime, and they have like all three versions.
The ones that are for free is the theatrical release. I didn't see the other ones. There is a special edition that might be. I don't know what the special edition means or what's the differences, but the assembly, I think you had to either rent for those right now.
Okay.
That's what I'm on there, at least Amazon Prime. But I would also just throw in again, too, if you're somebody who back then already had your mind made up, or you just don't remember, I think watching it a couple decades later, and like I think John said, putting them maybe 1, 2, 3, or watching them in a relatively short time span within each other, I think that you might have a different perspective. So.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, thank you, gents, for being here with us. Thank you, Rob, especially for coming on. You've been on with the last 2 weeks with us for Army of Darkness and for Alien 3. So thank you.
Yeah.
We were looking forward to having you back on.
Absolutely. Again, I was looking for more of a knockdown, drag out fight, but it sounds like we might have a convert, and who knows what's going on in Pat's mind.
Pat stayed pretty quiet the whole time, so I think he's just going to try to like track us down and kill us in our sleep.
Yeah.
That's right. See, that's the thing, is you guys can't escape.
Well, right. There's no hope.
You think you've won. You think you've won, and then I'm going to attach to. Never mind. Let's just say. Well, this is the first time I've seen it, so I'm kind of like, you know what I'm saying. But
well, I think that, and again, I'm not.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie.
I think just our discussion, I think, has enough empathy to understand why some people maybe did not like it,
right?
But also makes the strong case of why you should like it.
Mm-hmm.
I think overall, where it's not just like, hey, you didn't like this, you're crazy. I get why you might not, and that just might have been what your perspective or frame of mind or what you were expecting or wish you could have gotten, because we all want kind of that built-in hopeful sort of rainbow ending, but it's like, that's not what this was all about. And once you kind of accept that, you see the maybe the genius of it, or at least the cohesiveness and sense of it, the logic of it all together then. And I think it fits.
Yeah.
I think we haven't just been like, oh, it's the great. We understand why some people had some restrictions. I was able to experience them both probably back then, and now I can experience on the other side of it. So, yeah.
All right. Well, if you haven't already, go visit our website, 30podcast.com. We are also at 30podcast on most of the different social media stuff out there. The month of October, this is coming out on Halloween Day. So October this is it. No more October. So we are done with horror month. We are moving on into November. And in November, we've got our Patreon episodes are The King of Comedy. Rocky 3 is one of our Patreon shorts. Black Adam from this year is another one of our Patreon shorts. And then our regular episodes for the month of November are Thunderheart, Malcolm X, Unforgiven, Chaplin, and A River Runs Through It. So got some good stuff coming up. It's almost the end of the year. We are already almost into 1993. Kind of hard to believe that. But yeah, we are just marching right on ahead towards December and towards 93. So once again, thank you everybody for being here tonight. Had a really, really good time. This is, if I'm being completely honest, this is probably like one of my favorite discussions we've had in a while on the podcast. Like we've had some good discussions, but like I really, really enjoyed this one. So
it's fun to have a movie you can have a discussion about. You know what I'm saying? Like, yeah.
And one that I think a lot of people, for very different reasons and some valid reasons, would probably write off and be like, well, it's Alien 3, whatever. But look, we've been here for the last 2 hours talking about Alien 3. And
I personally know a couple of people who, when I told them that I was going to be joining you guys to talk about this, they were like, oh, well, I'm going to get some popcorn and listen to that discussion. I'm like, good.
Yeah, go for it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, we're going to set them straight.
All right. Well, thank you, everybody. Everybody, be excellent to each other. It's Halloween Day, so happy Halloween. Go get some candy. Go watch some scary movies, and we'll see you back here in November.